People who have came close to dying, what were your last thoughts? Trapped between the flames. I was stuck in a massive traffic jam, and there were wildfires burning on both sides of the road. The heat was so intense that I could not even put my hand on the window without it feeling like it would burn. The cell tower in our area had gone down, so there was no way to call or send a message to my family and friends who were not in the car to tell them I loved them. I just sat there, strangely calm, knowing there was nothing I could do. My whole family was drenched in sweat. My little brother was crying. I was only 15 years old, and I simply accepted that this was how my life would end. I did not waste time thinking about the things I wished I had done or the goals I still wanted to reach, because none of it seemed to matter. I was sure I would die quietly with my family inside that car. My mind felt blank. I put on my headphones and played my favorite songs, thinking that maybe I could take my last breath while listening to one of them. Hours later, the cars ahead finally started to move, but I could hardly keep my eyes open. I remember the first shower I took after the fire. Black soot swirled down the drain, and I stood there crying. From that day forward, I began telling people I loved them. I chose to live for myself. I came out about who I was, started working toward my future, and even sat at my first bonfire this year. It was still awful, but I faced it. The tooth that almost took me. I was 16 when my lower right wisdom tooth came in and cracked the tooth beside it. That break caused an abscess, and the infection spread deep into my jawbone. My mother drove me to the emergency room because my face was so swollen I could barely open my mouth. She thought I had lockjaw. The doctor there said they could not treat me and called for an ambulance to take me to another hospital an hour away. I remember drifting in and out of consciousness while they got me ready for surgery. My father was there with me. The last thought I had before they put me under was that I was not ready to go. I thought about how many people would be heartbroken if I died. I cried, and my dad just held my hand, told me he loved me, and helped me calm down. I spent a full month in the hospital recovering. My boyfriend at the time, who is now my husband, came to visit me. I missed my high school semester finals that year, and I was finally discharged on Christmas Eve. It was one of the hardest experiences of my life, but I made it through. Looking back now, I realize I was never actually close to dying, but at the time I did not know that. I was flying a small airplane, completely alone, over a wide, endless-looking lake. Suddenly, the engine started acting strange. I radioed it in right away. Within seconds, the sputtering began, and then there was nothing but silence. Propeller airplanes are usually loud, so the quiet was almost shocking. I spoke clearly into the radio. Houston flight, this is November 4951 Alpha. I have lost my engine. Houston replied, 51 Alpha, say again. I repeated, 51 Alpha repeating, I have lost my engine. For a moment, and only a moment, panic hit me. Then I just followed everything I had been taught in training. Eventually, I managed to bring the plane down safely. So no, I was never actually about to die, I think. But there was that instant when I was certain I was going to sink into the bottom of that lake. Honestly, the only thought in my head was, how in the world do I fix this? The drop in the sky. When I was 10 years old, my family took a trip to Florida with some of our extended relatives. The plan was for my parents to head back home to Massachusetts a few days before my brother and me so we could stay longer with my aunt and cousins. It was the first time I had ever traveled without my parents and only my second time flying, the first being the trip down. On the flight back into Logan Airport, the plane suddenly dropped. Not just a little bump, it felt like we were falling straight out of the sky. Later I was told it lasted maybe 3 to 5 seconds, but it was enough to make the oxygen masks fall from the ceiling. At 10 years old, I had seen enough movies to know exactly what that meant, or so I thought. To me, it was a sure sign we were about to die. I was crying, panicking, and looking around at everyone else doing the same. It was without question the most terrifying experience of my life. And yet, in the middle of all that chaos, one ridiculous thought stuck in my head. I am never going to finish my Age of Empires 2 campaign. That video game was, in my mind, my final unfinished business. It turned out to be just a sudden drop from the wind, but to this day, airplanes still feel like a strange sort of magic to me. A body under siege. I came down with the worst combination of illnesses I could imagine, the most aggressive strain of mononucleosis currently known, strep throat, infections in both ears, upper respiratory flu, lower respiratory flu, a sinus infection, and even pink eye, all at the same time. When I first went to the emergency room, the doctors did not know what was wrong. My vision began to fade, and I could barely hear. They even started testing me for a brain tumor. The only thing running through my mind was how much pain my death would cause. To my parents, my siblings, my friends, and my girlfriend. I thought I would not get the chance to say goodbye. I was so dehydrated that my organs were starting to shut down. The doctors told me that if I had waited one more day to come in, I would have died from complete organ failure. My white blood cell count was so high that some of the nurses and doctors said they had never seen numbers like that in their entire careers. They immediately hooked me up to 3 large bags of fluids just to keep me alive. I was also given an enormous amount of prednisone, over 200 milligrams per dose. The medicine had me so out of it that I barely remember the following week. I went home with my parents, lived on smoothies, slept constantly, and somehow managed to play and win matches in Apex Legends without even remembering doing it. They made me drink 2 to 3 liters of water every day. I coughed up a staggering amount of phlegm. After a week, the prednisone wiped out my flu and helped my body fight the mono symptoms, but it also made the bacterial infections, the strep, the ear infections, and the pink eye feel even worse. I could not speak for 2 weeks. Once the steroids were done, I was put on a very strong antibiotic that completely cleared out the good bacteria in my system. I had to stay home for another 3 or 4 days to recover from that. 3 weeks after my first visit to the emergency room, I returned to college. 5 weeks later, I finished the semester with a 3 for grade point average. I am still pretty proud of that. The fall and the light. It was the end of 6th grade, and our class took a trip to a ropes course park. There were rock climbing walls, high catwalks, and all sorts of things meant to test your courage. I was clipped into a relay line with a group of classmates 30 feet below me. I climbed up a tall pole, but when I reached the top, fear got the better of me. I signaled to my teacher that I wanted to come down, and she gave me the sign to lean back so I could be lowered. This is exactly why you always check before you trust the rope. The kids on my team were not paying attention. The moment I leaned back, I dropped off that catwalk like I had never been there at all. As I fell, the ground rushing up toward me, something caught my eye. Through the trees ahead, a burst of light broke through. It was stunning, the kind of warm, golden sunlight you might see filtering through the leaves on a hot summer day while you lie in the shade. I was so mesmerized that I started thinking, Christ, is that ever Bo? Before I could finish the thought, my classmates yanked on the rope, and I jerked to a stop. My mother had died just 6 months before this trip, and in that moment, I was sure the light was her, a guardian angel or something close to it. It was beautiful, haunting, and strange all at the same time. Hershey's and a close call. I was late to the conversation, but here goes. I used to be both a heroin addict and a dealer. I dealt for about half the decade I was using. Being a small blonde girl in New Mexico, I often relied on certain male friends to drive me around and help me make sales. In return, I kept them supplied enough so they would not go through withdrawal, and they kept me safe, or as safe as you can be in that world. One of those guys was only concerned with getting his daily fix. Around that time, I had been prescribed Klonopin. I barely remember an entire week of mixing heroin with those pills. Do not do it before this particular day. My routine was simple. Shoot up, take a Klonopin, and then just pass out in the back seat while the guy handled the driving and the deals. Somehow, he figured out my habit and told a girl he was interested in. That day, she climbed into the front passenger seat. He was driving, and I was stretched out in the back like an overconfident addict. She introduced herself politely. I had just made a big sale, and my friend got his cut, which he planned to share with her. I decided to join them. Even though I had snorted some of my benzodiazepines just 10 minutes earlier, I cooked up another shot. The last thing I remember was them laughing, offering me a piece of chocolate, and me saying, "Absolutely, I love Hershey's with almonds." Those were my last conscious thoughts. They left me unresponsive in the back of my own car, but by sheer luck, We were parked in a part of town where a real friend happened to spot my vehicle. He pulled me out and saved my life. I was nearly dead, covered in chocolate, half naked, and sprawled in the back seat. To this day, I can only hope the half-naked part was just me being high in skimpy clothes and not me adjusting them while rolling around in the mess that was my back seat. Fading on the bathroom floor. Earlier this year, I came closer to dying than I ever had before. I was experiencing severe abnormal uterine bleeding, so bad that I kept losing consciousness. I fainted 4 times in less than 12 hours. Twice, I vomited while I was out cold. Thankfully, I happened to be sitting up when I came to, so I did not choke. One of the times I passed out, it felt like I was dreaming. It was not one of those life-flashing before your eyes moments. It was just an ordinary, mundane dream, like I had dropped into deep sleep. I guess I had gone straight into REM while unconscious. As the day went on, I reached the point where I could not get up off the bathroom floor. Even trying to sit up made me feel like I would pass out again. An ambulance was called, and I was carried out on a stretcher. My awareness of what was happening was faint at best. I had this overwhelming urge to just close my eyes and sleep, but I knew deep down it was not the kind of sleep you wake up from. My best friend was there, nudging me to keep me awake until the paramedics arrived. By then, I no longer felt fear. I barely felt anything, just the pull toward unconsciousness, and the strange certainty that it would not lead anywhere good. At the emergency room, the doctors told me my hemoglobin count was 4, 6 and dropping fast. One nurse even said point-blank that if I had not come in, I most likely would have died. Multiple blood transfusions were needed just to stabilize me. Uterine fibroids are no joke. The kids between the bullets. I was in a small village in Afghanistan. My job was as an electrical engineer, and our team went from village to village building small schools and clinics to win hearts and minds. One day, while we were working, gunfire erupted from enemies about 400 to 500 yards away. Both sides started firing. Then I spotted 2 kids, maybe 50 yards from our line, trapped in the middle of it all. They were crouched behind a small rock, screaming. I do not know why, but without thinking, I dropped my rifle and ran straight toward them. I scooped up the small boy, grabbed the girl's hand, and sprinted back towards safety. I was about 10 yards from a low wall and safety when it felt like an elephant had kicked me square in the back. All the air left my lungs, and I was thrown forward into the dirt. I had been shot. Lying there, my last thoughts were strangely calm. At least I died saving kids. That is not a bad way to go. Then I thought of Milo, our family Labrador, and how much I missed him. I thought about how temporary life is, just a blink compared to whatever comes next. But then, I felt the girl tugging on my hand, pulling me back into reality. The bullets were still snapping through the air. That was when I realized the round had hit my plate carrier. I was alive. My ribs were fractured, but I was still breathing. I got up, still clutching her hand, and made it behind the wall with both kids safe. Thanks to those 2 broken ribs, I got to skate through the rest of the deployment with lighter duties. Almost gone over a slice of pizza. Warning, this one is rough. Like someone else said, I once got food stuck in my throat and truly thought I was about to die. It was a cheap dollar pizza, the kind that's all soft and spongy. I cut it into 4 pieces. The first piece I put in my mouth wasn't chewed enough because I was distracted playing BioShock. I swallowed it whole and immediately regretted it. Within seconds, I was choking hard. My vision started closing in. No air was getting past that pizza, and my limbs felt weak as hell. Every bit of strength I had was disappearing fast. I was alone, choking in the back room of my house. No phone nearby. This was before most teenagers had cell phones, or maybe I just couldn't afford one. My body started uncontrollably gulping, trying to clear my throat. I remember tears welling up as I thought, I'm going to die choking on a damn cheap pizza. After surviving a suicide attempt only months before, I had been feeling like I was starting fresh with life. But now, a wave of dread hit me hard. I thought about how badly my friends would be hurt if they found my body there. Desperate, I slammed my ribcage against the back of the chair I was sitting in. Once, twice, 3 times. No luck. On the 5th try, I hit the sharp corner of the chair, which somehow was perfect for moving that pizza slice and triggering a violent vomit reflex. The pizza came up, I vomited everywhere, and then I collapsed on the floor, crying for almost an hour. It was awful. I never told anyone about it. I even spent 4 hours cleaning that room afterward to erase any signs it happened. I haven't thought about it in years, but it definitely changed me. Now I chew my food carefully and eat slowly. Life lesson. Chew your freaking food all the way. Locked out in the cold and finding myself. When I was a junior in high school, I was dating a girl who struggled with pretty bad depression. Every day was a new problem, and somehow I was the one expected to fix it, not her. At the same time, I was doing terrible in school. I went from being super socially anxious to learning how to party, and I focused only on partying. I was failing high school. My brother was a drug addict who stole from people, though he has since recovered. My mom worked full-time. Basically, everything in my life felt like one big mess. One day, all of that stress hit me at once. The last little thing was my mom accidentally locking me out of the house during a deep Minnesota winter. I was so angry, like pure rage melting the snow around me. Felt like my blood was boiling. I punched, kicked, and screamed as loud as I could until I became dizzy and lightheaded. Then I passed out. When I woke up, I was lying in a snowbank in my driveway. I still felt lightheaded but also warm. That weird, perfect warmth you feel when you wake up from a great sleep with blankets just right. I thought, wait, why am I feeling warm? I'm in a snowbank. I focused and forced myself to get up. My goal was to knock on a neighbor's door. Walking felt like carrying a ton of bricks. The first neighbor didn't answer. Neither did the second. I barely made it to the third before collapsing on their doorstep. No answer. I didn't panic. I just kept thinking, keep moving. Keep moving. My mind and body were running at just 1%. I managed to crawl to one more neighbor's door and scratched at it more than knocked. They opened up. It was a family friend who knew me. They took me inside, wrapped me in blankets, and put an electric heater on my chest. That's when I finally let myself give up. I woke up later on that neighbor's couch, my mom nudging me awake. I was weak, nauseous, and disoriented. She brought me home, and we just brushed it off. I didn't feel great, but I wasn't dying, right? As the days went on, I got weaker. I could barely keep my eyes open. My mom is anti-doctor, not anti-vaccine, so we tried to let me sleep it off. We live in the United States, so the fear of medical debt was real. I started coughing badly. My mind became hazy. Getting out of bed was too hard. I became bedridden. I finally convinced my mom to take me to a minute clinic. The doctor looked at me, told me to open my mouth and said, "You just have strep throat, you'll be fine. Sleep it off." She gave me a spray and that was it. But the next 2 weeks were the worst sickness I've ever experienced. My cough worsened. My brain felt numb. I lost weight. Simple thoughts drained all my energy. One morning, I told my mom I needed to see a doctor again. I wasn't really thinking. I was just moving. My pale, sick body was too weak to care. We went to a real clinic. The doctor looked in my throat, looked me in the eye, and said, "You need to go to the emergency room right now." I finally knew I was dying. I felt blank. My mom guided me through the chaos. At the emergency room, I got a doctor who looked like he walked out of a soap opera, tight scrubs and a gold chain around his neck. He told my parents I had a peritonsillar abscess, an infection in my tonsils closing my throat. I had about the tip of a pen's space left to breathe. The infection was shutting down my immune system. He gave me 3 options: emergency tonsillectomy surgery, try to sleep it off, or have him suck the abscess out with a needle right now. He said the needle option was quick and easy. I told him I was scared of needles and had a strong gag reflex. He said I'd be fine. He numbed my throat. I told him I could still feel something, but he got annoyed and said I was wrong. My mom told him to wear a face mask. He said, "Who's the doctor here?" We stayed quiet. He stuck the needle into my throat and punctured the abscess. I gagged hard and vomited blood and pus all over his face. After that, I don't remember much. My throat filled with blood and pus, and I was vomiting all over myself, too weak to roll over. My fight or flight kicked in, but it felt like I was watching from the outside. a spirit over my dead body. My mom rolled me over, and I kept throwing up on the floor. In that moment, I was the calmest I'd ever been. I promised myself to appreciate everything and everyone around me, to love more, and not to get angry at the world. I accepted it. I woke up, drugged and hooked up to N4, in a hospital bed. And here I am, making it to today. This story makes me cry writing it because I became a different person after that. I'm grateful it happened because it showed me what really matters in life. If you want me to share more, or if you have questions, just ask. Pushed under the river. I was just seconds away from drowning in whitewater. I didn't know my life vest wasn't meant for whitewater, and the crazy current pushed me down to the bottom of the river. It dragged me along like I was nothing. When I realized I was done, that was the last clear thought I had. I hope my kids will be okay without me. After that, everything was just quick flashes of calm feelings. I stopped fighting. I just let it happen. That's what saved me. Not struggling gave me more time with the little oxygen left in my blood. The river kept dragging me along under the water. Then suddenly the current shifted and shot me up about 20 feet to the surface. I gasped, coughing up water, and struggled to swim to shore. When I finally knew I was safe, just a few feet away from danger, I laid in the water trying to catch my breath. It's funny now, but I used to think shipwreck scenes in movies were silly. Like, why would someone stay in the water if they almost drowned? But it's exactly what happens. Once the worst is over, you just lie there trying to be human again. I've had other close calls, but I never knew how close to death I was until that moment. I was sure I was done. Because of that, the 6 months that followed were the best of my life. My depression nearly disappeared. My anxiety lost its grip. I knew how bad life could get, and how much better it was now. Sadly, mental illness always finds its way back.